In an age ruled by impulses, where distractions dominate every waking hour and comfort is placed above character, the pursuit of self-discipline is no longer just a virtue. It is a form of rebellion. The ancient Stoics understood that mastery over the self is the highest form of freedom. On Stoic Diary, we are not chasing trends. We are awakening the part of you that refuses to be ruled by weakness. Comment the phrase, "Discipline is my freedom." Let that be your first act of will today. Because without discipline, your intentions mean nothing. Your dreams dissolve. Your values rot under the weight of inconsistency. But with discipline, even quiet, private, imperfect discipline, you reclaim your mind from the world. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire yet feared the loss of his own moral clarity, reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength does not come from wishes. It comes from training, from inner war. Discipline is not a straight line. It is not about perfection. It is not about screaming at your flaws or punishing your slip-ups. It is the act of returning to what matters again and again, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching, especially when your lower nature demands ease. The Stoics spoke often of logos, reason, structure, order. Self-discipline is your personal expression of logos in a chaotic world. It is the shape you give to your life when everything around you pulls you towards shapelessness. Marcus wrote not as a philosopher in ivory towers, but as a tired man facing war, politics, illness, and betrayal. Yet each night he wrote to himself reminders, corrections, renewals of purpose. His meditations were not for others, they were for his soul. That is what self-discipline is, speaking to your higher self when your lower self wants to take over. It is keeping your promises to yourself quietly, relentlessly. In this video, we will walk through 12 Stoic principles that build unshakable self-discipline. These are not theories. They are practical tools, forged in the writings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, and meant to be lived. These principles do not require you to withdraw from the world, but to stand more firmly in it. They do not demand harshness, but clarity. They do not promise ease, but they offer something deeper, inner command. You will recognize yourself in these ideas, not the version of you that is distracted, reactive, easily swayed, but the deeper part, the part that wants to stand tall when life pushes you down. Each principle is a mirror, and each one, when lived, gives you back a piece of your strength. The path to discipline is slow, but every step on it is real. And every day you practice it, you become less a servant of your mood and more a master of your mind. Ask yourself this: if your life depended on doing what you said you would do, would you act differently? Would you delay less, excuse less, obey your impulses less? The Stoics believed that we should live as if today were our last, not to panic, but to clarify. Clarity breeds action, and action repeated becomes discipline. There is no mystery to this, only repetition, only attention, only intention made solid by habits. Seneca wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." Discipline is how we stop postponing. It is how we stop lying to ourselves. It is how we take our suffering and turn it into strength, not through motivation, but through routine. That is the Stoic way, not dramatic change, but daily alignment. In a world that seduces you into passivity, the most radical thing you can do is take command of your attention, your body, your thoughts. Each principle you are about to learn is a strike against chaos. Each one is a way to become what the Stoics called psychos, a well-souled person. And the soul becomes well not by talking, but by training. So take a breath. Let go of everything you thought you needed to feel ready. You do not need to feel ready. You need only to begin. This is the beginning. The first real act of discipline is choosing to stay present through this, to listen, to absorb, and most of all, to act. You will fall. You will forget. But the Stoic returns. Every single day, he returns to the path. That's what you're doing now. Remember, comment below with the phrase, "Discipline is my freedom." That is not just a line, it is your declaration of war against everything inside you that wants to stay soft, distracted, or afraid. Now let's begin with the 12th principle, and we'll work our way down one by one until you understand, and more importantly live, what the Stoics meant by discipline. Lesson 12. Cultivate indifference toward pleasure and pain. One of the most profound truths that Stoicism teaches, and one of the hardest to embody, is this: pleasure and pain are not to be trusted, not because they are inherently evil, but because they are unreliable guides. What feels good is not always good. What hurts is not always harmful. The disciplined life does not reject pleasure or embrace pain blindly. It regards both with a calm, critical eye. It asks, always, does this serve virtue? Does this serve strength? Does this serve reason? Marcus Aurelius, sitting in the tension between power and principle, returned to this over and over. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. But this control, this sovereignty of the soul, cannot coexist with attachment to comfort or fear of discomfort. And so, the 12th principle in our path to discipline is this: cultivate indifference toward pleasure and pain. What does that mean? It means you must learn to experience joy without chasing it, and to endure pain without resenting it. It means seeing both as neutral, data, not destiny. The Stoics didn't ask you to be emotionless. They asked you to be unmoved by what is outside your control. And pleasure and pain, though they feel intensely personal, often fall squarely into that category. They come and go. They rise and fade. You cannot build a strong life on the shifting winds of either. Pleasure seduces. It makes you soft. It whispers that you've done enough, that you've earned rest, that you don't need to train, to push, to hold the line. It creates entitlement, and entitlement kills discipline. That's why Marcus called it a bait, because it lures you from your higher self. Not all pleasure, but unexamined pleasure. The kind that sneaks into your day and steals your edge. Pain intimidates. It makes you doubt. It screams that something's wrong, that you should run, avoid, give up. It threatens your focus, clouds your thinking. But the Stoic knows pain is a teacher. Epictetus said, "Difficulties are things that show a person who they are." Pain, endured with purpose, purifies the will. It clarifies what matters. It shows you what you're made of, or what you're missing. But how do we actually cultivate indifference? Not with theory, with practice. It begins by confronting your habits. Start with pleasure. Ask yourself, what pleasures do I rely on? Which ones dictate my mood, my focus, my decisions? Is it the phone? Is it food? Is it praise? Is it leisure? Then, one by one, begin to introduce friction, not to punish yourself, to test your strength. Delay gratification. Say no when your lower nature says yes. Fast. Turn off the device. Take the cold shower. Walk when you could ride. Work when you'd rather coast. At first, it feels like denial, like resistance. But then something shifts. You realize you are not your impulses. You realize you can delay, redirect, endure, and not only survive, but grow stronger. That is the foundation of indifference. Now, face pain. Begin with the small. Physical discomfort, emotional disappointment, daily stress. Don't run, don't dramatize, don't project. Just sit with it, observe it, let it sharpen you. Ask, what can I still control? How can I act with virtue in this moment? Because when you act with virtue, even in pain, you win. Pain does not defeat the Stoic, it refines them. Marcus Aurelius endured illness, betrayal, war, and loss. And yet he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not just philosophy, that's a choice. It is the choice to meet pain not with self-pity, but with resolve. To use it, not to curse it. That choice repeated becomes indifference, not numbness, but power. Indifference is not apathy. It is not being cold or disconnected. It is being deeply connected to the only thing that matters, your reasoned choice. It is staying rooted in what you can control, regardless of how you feel. This is why pleasure and pain must be treated the same. Not as enemies or gods, but as tests. They ask you, are you in control? Or are you a puppet? The modern world makes this harder. Everything is built to feed impulse. The algorithm knows your weaknesses. The market sells your comforts. The culture worships ease. But Stoicism is counterculture. It asks you to stand firm in a soft age. It asks you to remember that comfort is not the goal. Character is. And character is built when you say, I will not be ruled by cravings. I will not be broken by suffering. I will choose the harder path if it makes me stronger. I will accept the bitter moment if it reveals who I truly am. Seneca said, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. That friction is everywhere, in temptation, in fatigue, in insult, in boredom. Your discipline is revealed not in how you speak, but in what you resist. And when you fail, because you will, you don't collapse, you return. The Stoic always returns. Every act of return is a victory. Every time you say no to weakness, yes to reason, yes to effort, yes to virtue, you become freer. Not from pain, not from desire, but from being owned by them. This is the power of indifference. It is the quiet power that says, I don't need this pleasure to be whole. I don't fear this pain enough to betray myself. I remain, I act, I endure, I grow. You build this through choice, daily, simple, brutal choice. And as you choose discipline over ease, reason over impulse, virtue over emotion, you begin to change. You harden in the right ways. You soften in the right places. You become what the Stoics admired most, stable, upright, unmoved. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by desire, remember this lesson. Step back, breathe, ask, who is in control right now, me or my craving? Choose, then act. The next time you are in pain, real pain, don't collapse, don't identify with it. Say instead, this is a test. This is the fire, this is my forge, and step forward, because indifference toward pleasure and pain is not the end of discipline, it is its highest form. It is the moment when you no longer ask, do I feel like it, but instead, is it right? That shift from emotion to reason is the birth of true power. This is how you begin to rule yourself. This is how you become unbreakable. Lesson 11. Practice voluntary hardship. Stoicism teaches that the soul is strengthened not in comfort, but in challenge. The modern mind resists this truth instinctively. We flee discomfort, we chase ease, and we mistake comfort for success. But Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca repeatedly remind us, a disciplined life is forged through voluntary hardship. This is not suffering for its own sake, nor a form of self-punishment. It is training the will, sharpening character, and preparing the soul for the inevitable trials of life. By practicing hardship willingly, we condition ourselves to endure, to act, and to remain serene when real adversity arrives. The principle of voluntary hardship is deceptively simple. Choose to do what is difficult, inconvenient, or uncomfortable today so that tomorrow you will meet life's inevitable challenges with strength and composure. Consider Marcus Aurelius himself. He woke at dawn in a tent, surrounded by uncertainty and political pressures, to write his meditations. Every word was a deliberate act of discipline, a voluntary engagement with mental rigor. Every day, he exposed himself to discomfort, the cold, the long marches, the endless decisions with grave consequences, to train his mind to remain unshaken. This was the practice of voluntary hardship, and it is the essence of resilience. Modern life rarely forces us to practice real hardship. Jobs, entertainment, and conveniences have softened us. Even minor discomforts are often avoided. A short walk becomes a drive, a cold shower becomes warm, effort is outsourced to machines. Stoicism urges us to reclaim our will through small, deliberate acts of difficulty. Take cold showers, fast occasionally, deny yourself minor pleasures, walk instead of taking the easiest route. These are not mere exercises, they are a form of rehearsal for the trials that cannot be avoided. Each voluntary hardship is a rehearsal for resilience. The Stoics understood that life itself is unpredictable, often painful, and sometimes cruel. By willingly engaging in small hardships, we cultivate an inner immunity. The body becomes accustomed to discomfort. The mind becomes accustomed to denial. The emotions, which normally swing wildly in response to inconvenience, begin to stabilize. A small daily effort multiplies over time, forming the core of self-discipline. You begin to internalize a profound truth. Your strength does not come from the absence of hardship, but from your mastery of it. Consider Epictetus, who spent decades as a slave. Every day was filled with potential humiliation, discomfort, and constraint. Yet he chose to cultivate voluntary hardships as a way to strengthen his spirit. He exercised restraint in food, speech, and action. He trained his mind to remain unconquered by circumstance. Even in slavery, his will remained free because he had long practiced voluntary hardship. This principle, practiced daily, gives you a psychological advantage. When life imposes suffering, you have already prepared. You do not react with panic or despair, but with measured, deliberate action. Voluntary hardship also builds humility. We are reminded that life is not owed to us and that ease is not our right. By choosing difficulty, we confront our own sense of entitlement. We recognize our dependence on discipline, not on fortune. Each small denial, each deliberate discomfort, is a reminder that the good life is not found in indulgence but in mastery. And mastery, the Stoics insist, is the highest form of happiness. The disciplined mind enjoys what is truly valuable, not what is convenient or immediately gratifying. To integrate voluntary hardship into your life, begin with the small and manageable. Skip a meal or reduce your portion intentionally, not because you must, but to remind yourself of self-control. Take the longer, harder route instead of the easy one. Practice mental discomfort by reflecting honestly on your flaws or sitting in quiet solitude without distractions. Each act conditions your mind to accept effort and resist avoidance. With repetition, you learn that hardship is not your enemy. It is a teacher, a trainer, and a forge. Moreover, voluntary hardship strengthens your moral judgment. When you choose difficulty deliberately, you practice courage, patience, and fortitude. You learn to act according to principle rather than impulse. Pleasure, ease, and comfort often cloud judgment. By temporarily stepping away from comfort, you gain clarity. You see more clearly what is truly necessary, what is truly valuable, and what is only distraction. In essence, voluntary hardship sharpens perception as well as will. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the benefit of confronting daily inconveniences and challenges. He reminded himself that if he could endure minor discomforts without complaint, he would not falter when confronted with major trials. Every inconvenience was an opportunity to exercise patience, courage, and reason. Every small refusal to take the easy path reinforced his capacity to act with virtue when real adversity arrived. This is the core of voluntary hardship. Practice with purpose, cultivate inner strength, and transform everyday difficulty into spiritual training. Embracing this principle also changes the way we view suffering imposed by life. When real hardship occurs, illness, loss, betrayal, The trained mind recognizes that suffering itself is not the enemy. The enemy is the mind that panics, complains, or abandons virtue in response. By practicing voluntary hardship, you build an internal reservoir of strength. You are not crushed by difficulty. You are tested, refined, and elevated. This mental preparation is the essence of resilience, and it underpins all other forms of discipline. Finally, voluntary hardship teaches gratitude. When you voluntarily endure discomfort, you develop appreciation for ordinary ease and for moments of genuine pleasure. You begin to notice the difference between what is essential and what is trivial. Pleasure becomes sweeter, comfort more valuable, but neither seduces you. You are no longer enslaved by cravings or soft desires. You are the master of your choices, and your mind becomes a citadel, unshaken by fortune or misfortune. By practicing voluntary hardship consistently, you internalize the Stoic maxim that the good life is not a life of comfort, but a life of virtue and reason. Each small act of self-imposed challenge accumulates, forming a character that is resilient, decisive, and free. The world may throw its difficulties at you unbidden, but the disciplined mind, trained through voluntary hardship, meets them with calm, clarity, and strength. This is not a theoretical exercise. This is the path to genuine self-discipline, the cultivation of a soul that thrives under any condition, and the ultimate preparation for a life guided by reason, virtue, and inner freedom. Lesson 10. Control your desires. At the heart of self-discipline lies the mastery of desire. The Stoics understood that our impulses, cravings, and longings are the primary forces that lead the mind astray. Desire is seductive. It promises fulfillment, satisfaction, and happiness, but often delivers distraction, frustration, and weakness. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly warned himself against allowing desires to dictate his actions, reminding that the mind must remain sovereign over bodily urges and fleeting cravings. The disciplined individual recognizes that unbridled desire enslaves the soul, while reasoned control liberates it. To control your desires does not mean to suppress them violently, nor to deny the natural appetites of life. It means to understand them, observe them, and act with discernment. The Stoics differentiated between what is necessary and what is superfluous. Necessary desires for food, rest, or health are not wrong. Superfluous desires for excess, indulgence, or fleeting pleasures must be subordinated to reason. The disciplined mind practices this daily, scrutinizing its cravings and submitting them to rational evaluation. Consider the modern world, where desire is amplified by every advertisement, every social media feed, every cultural signal promising that fulfillment lies in consumption. The average person is bombarded with urges to buy, to consume, to impress, to indulge. Each of these urges, if left unchecked, chips away at self-discipline. The Stoics would say, the soul that yields to every impulse becomes a slave, no matter how much external success it accumulates. The true measure of freedom is the mastery of desire, not the abundance of possessions or pleasures. Marcus Aurelius faced desire in its many forms. The desire for comfort in a physically demanding life, the desire for approval in a politically complex world, the desire for ease while ruling an empire. He trained himself to respond not to the call of appetite or vanity, but to the guiding principle of reason. He understood that discipline does not come from denying the world, but from choosing deliberately what aligns with virtue. When a craving arises, pause. Ask, does this advance my character or weaken it? Let this question guide action rather than the fleeting tug of passion. Epictetus provides a practical framework for controlling desire. He instructs to examine what is within our control, our thoughts, our choices, our judgments, and to let go of what is not. Desire for external things is ultimately outside our control. We cannot ensure wealth, praise, or comfort. To depend upon these things is to tie our happiness to the whims of fortune. But we can control our appetite, our restraint, our discipline. By focusing on the inner domain, we reduce the power of desire and strengthen the mind's sovereignty. The process of controlling desire requires daily vigilance. Start with awareness. Observe each urge as it arises. Note its intensity, its source, its object. Does it serve your highest goals? Does it align with virtue? If the answer is no, redirect the mind. Replace indulgent thoughts with rational reflection. Replace impulsive action with measured response. Over time, these repeated exercises condition the mind to act autonomously, no longer governed by the pull of every whim or impulse. Control of desire also builds patience. Many desires are instant. They demand immediate satisfaction. Stoicism teaches that the disciplined mind can delay gratification, understanding that enduring effort yields greater strength and deeper fulfillment than transient pleasure. By choosing to wait, to restrain, to endure, you exercise willpower and reinforce self-mastery. This is not deprivation, it is empowerment. Each refusal to surrender to impulse strengthens the soul's independence. Furthermore, controlling desire fosters clarity and focus. The mind, freed from the distraction of craving, can concentrate on what truly matters: virtue, reason, and the fulfillment of one's duties. It is remarkable how much energy and attention are consumed by trivial longings, the pursuit of status, the obsession with appearances, the endless chase for novelty. The Stoic mind learns to conserve its strength for pursuits that cultivate character and wisdom. Here lies a key insight. Discipline is not merely restriction, it is strategic allocation of mental and emotional energy. A practical exercise in controlling desire is to intentionally abstain from minor pleasures. Do not indulge every craving immediately. Resist small temptations. Delay gratification in simple daily acts: eating, drinking, entertainment. This builds resilience and prepares the mind to withstand larger tests. Similarly, reflect daily on desires that dominate your thinking and assess whether they are aligned with virtue. This reflection alone begins to break the hold of unexamined impulses. Control of desire also requires humility. Recognize that your natural inclinations are not inherently trustworthy guides. Human nature is prone to exaggeration of need and distortion of satisfaction. The disciplined mind interrogates these impulses. Is this truly necessary, or am I deceived by habit and culture? By questioning desire, you reclaim authority over your life. By mastering the inner domain, you gain independence from external influences. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that the mind must be firm in the face of desire. To act virtuously is to prioritize reason over impulse, principle over passion, character over comfort. Desire will arise constantly, but the disciplined mind exercises choice at every moment. It does not surrender to every craving, nor does it blindly accept deprivation. It evaluates, decides, and acts with intention. The more consistent this practice becomes, the more freedom the individual attains. In conclusion, controlling your desires is one of the pillars of self-discipline. It is a lifelong exercise in awareness, restraint, and rational action. Pleasure becomes a tool, not a tyrant. Avoidance of pain becomes intentional, not reactive. By observing desires, reflecting on their purpose, and acting with reason, you construct a mind capable of facing adversity, resisting temptation, and achieving clarity of purpose. Each day, you practice control. You reinforce the inner citadel. Desire becomes a servant, not a master, and the soul grows stronger with every disciplined choice. This principle, like all Stoic principles, is not abstract. It is lived, It is practiced. It is embodied in the small decisions of daily life, in meals, in speech, in relationships, in work, in thought. The person who controls desire, who aligns action with reason and virtue, becomes unshakable. Desire, once a force of chaos, is transformed into a measured companion, guiding energy rather than consuming it. This is the essence of discipline, mastery over oneself. Lesson 9. Focus on what you can control. One of the most fundamental and transformative principles of Stoicism is the ability to distinguish between what lies within our control and what does not. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca emphasized this repeatedly, not as an abstract theory, but as a practical method for living with clarity, tranquility, and discipline. The mind, when distracted by external circumstances beyond its influence, becomes restless, anxious, and reactive. Conversely, when it concentrates only on what is within its power, thoughts, choices, judgments, and actions, it becomes strong, calm, and unshakable. Discipline begins here, the mastery of one's internal domain. The challenge is that human nature instinctively seeks to control everything. We attempt to manipulate other people, force events to bend to our will, and resist outcomes that displease us. We measure our happiness, security, and self-worth against the shifting tides of fortune. The Stoics warn that this is the surest path to suffering. Desire for what is beyond our influence creates frustration. Attachment to outcomes produces despair. The disciplined mind, by contrast, recognizes that the only true domain of sovereignty lies within. To act only where control is possible is to conserve energy, strengthen judgment, and cultivate peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about this principle in his Meditations. He reminded himself that anger, disappointment, and grief are not caused by events themselves, but by judgments about them. A person insults you. This is external. You are upset. That is your judgment. You fear failure. That is your judgment. The external events are neutral. It is your interpretation and response that determine your emotional state. Self-discipline arises from this awareness. You cannot control others, but you can control your reaction. You cannot prevent adversity, but you can choose your response. Focusing on what you can control also liberates the mind from wasted effort. Time, energy, and attention are finite resources. The person who chases outcomes beyond their power depletes these resources, often in vain. Consider modern life. We obsess over the opinions of others, the unpredictability of markets, political outcomes, or the uncontrollable behavior of peers. All of these lie outside our domain. The Stoic redirects energy toward action, thought, and virtue. That is, toward what can truly be influenced. This redirection is the cornerstone of discipline. Epictetus taught that the first step in mastery is this: consciously separate externals from internals. Externals, wealth, reputation, health, social status, are not inherently good or evil. They are indifferent in Stoic terms. Their value is not intrinsic but determined by the mind. Internals, character, judgment, will, action, are the true sources of good. The disciplined person invests in what is genuinely valuable, ignoring the fluctuating opinions and circumstances of the world. This mental alignment produces resilience, equanimity, and moral clarity. Practically focusing on what you can control requires consistent reflection. Each morning, before engaging with the world, consider, what today can I influence? What is outside my power? Make a deliberate decision to act only on the former. If someone offends you, respond with reason, not emotion. If a task is assigned, fulfill it to the best of your ability. If circumstances fail to align with desire, accept them without complaint. Every act of focus reinforces self-mastery. This principle also protects against emotional manipulation and external coercion. When you understand that only your choices are truly yours, others lose the ability to disturb your peace. You no longer depend on approval, validation, or praise. You act according to reason and virtue, not external influence. This is why the Stoics considered this principle central to self-discipline. It empowers the individual to live freely in a world that is unpredictable and often hostile. Moreover, focusing on what is controllable enhances efficiency. The mind, unburdened by futile worry, is sharper, more decisive, and more effective. You can act with precision and confidence because your efforts are not scattered in the futile pursuit of things beyond reach. You can respond strategically, conserving energy for meaningful actions. Each choice to focus inward strengthens judgment and builds mental resilience, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of discipline. The practical exercises are simple but transformative. Begin each day with a list. What can I influence today? Write down 3 things within your control: your actions, your speech, your attitude, and commit to them. Throughout the day, when frustration, envy, or irritation arises, ask, is this within my control? If not, release it. If yes, act wisely. Repeat. This constant checking cultivates awareness, strengthens mental clarity, and embeds the principle into daily life. Over time, your judgment becomes sharper, your emotions more stable, and your discipline more powerful. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that life will always present circumstances beyond control: death, illness, betrayal, economic fluctuation, and natural disaster. These events are neutral. They carry no moral weight. The individual who invests mental energy in resisting them suffers unnecessarily. The Stoic approach is to treat external adversity as material for training. Endure it, learn from it, act rightly, and return to what is within control. This perspective transforms misfortune into a tool for growth and reinforces the foundation of self-discipline. Finally, focusing on what you can control nurtures moral courage. When the mind is unshaken by the unpredictable actions of others, it becomes capable of acting ethically, even under pressure. You act from principle, not expediency. You refuse to compromise integrity for convenience. You hold to virtue regardless of the shifting opinions or behaviors of the world. In this way, discipline is inseparable from character. Control of the internal domain is not abstract. It is lived in every decision, every action, every moment of self-reflection. In summary, this 9th principle is a cornerstone of Stoic discipline. By directing attention and energy only toward what is within your power, your thoughts, actions, and judgments, you conserve strength, cultivate resilience, and secure freedom. Desire, fear, envy, and distraction lose their power. External chaos no longer destabilizes the mind. Discipline arises naturally from clarity about what is controllable. This clarity is not a gift of circumstance, but the product of constant practice, reflection, and deliberate choice. To focus on what you can control is to stand at the helm of your soul, steering through the turbulence of life with calm, reason, and unshakable purpose. Lesson 8. Practice. Mindful reflection. Self-discipline is not only cultivated through action, it is refined through reflection. The Stoics recognize that the mind, left unchecked, drifts, forgets, and succumbs to distraction. Marcus Aurelius devoted countless pages of his meditations to the deliberate examination of his thoughts, actions, and motives. He instructed himself to consider each day in its fullness, to weigh his responses, and to correct what was misaligned with virtue. This practice, repeated consistently, becomes a powerful mechanism for self-mastery. Reflection transforms experience into wisdom, trial into training, and habit into deliberate discipline. Mindful reflection is not passive. It is not simply thinking about the day or recounting events. It is a structured, purposeful engagement with the self. Each evening, the Stoics advised reviewing one's actions. Were my desires aligned with reason? Did I act with virtue? Did I allow impulse to dominate judgment? Did I respond to adversity with courage or weakness? By asking these questions honestly, one cultivates an internal authority that is impervious to external turbulence. Discipline in this context is the deliberate shaping of character through introspection. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that many obstacles are born not from the world itself, but from misjudgment and misperception. Mindful reflection allows the individual to identify such errors in thought before they manifest in action. If you act impulsively, reflection reveals the reasoning that led astray. If emotions dominate, reflection uncovers the triggers and patterns. By systematically analyzing your internal landscape, you build a cognitive map of yourself, empowering intentional choices rather than reactive behavior. The Stoic approach to reflection also emphasizes gratitude and perspective. Consider the challenges, difficulties, and inconveniences of the day not as punishments, but as opportunities for growth. Each disappointment is a lesson. Each irritation is a mirror. By reflecting mindfully, you learn to differentiate between trivial disturbances and substantive trials. You learn to value effort over ease, principle over pleasure, and reason over impulse. This perspective not only strengthens discipline, but also fosters tranquility and resilience. Epictetus highlighted the importance of preparing for the day through reflection, not only reviewing past actions. He suggested beginning with intention, anticipate the obstacles you may encounter, and consider how to act virtuously in response. This proactive reflection is a rehearsal for integrity. By visualizing adversity and rehearsing disciplined responses, you train the mind to remain unshaken when real challenges arise. Reflection, therefore, is both backward-looking and forward-looking, a synthesis of learning from the past and preparing for the future. Mindful reflection also nurtures humility. By reviewing one's errors without judgment or self-pity, the Stoic cultivates a clear understanding of strengths and weaknesses. This honesty prevents arrogance and encourages growth. Discipline is sustained not by self-congratulation, but by continuous measured improvement. Reflection becomes a mirror in which the mind discerns its progress, recognizes its flaws, and charts a course toward virtue. Each evening spent in contemplation is an investment in self-mastery. Practical implementation of reflection requires consistency and focus. Set aside a fixed time daily, morning or evening, to engage with your thoughts and actions. Write in a journal or meditate silently. Ask key questions. Were my actions aligned with virtue? Did I respond with reason rather than emotion? Where did I fail, and how can I correct it tomorrow? The act of externalizing thoughts through writing or structured contemplation reinforces memory, clarity, and deliberate intention. Over time, this becomes a habit, and habit shapes character. Moreover, reflection builds awareness of patterns. You begin to notice recurring impulses, habitual reactions, and emotional triggers. Awareness is the foundation of discipline. The mind cannot master what it does not perceive. By cataloging recurring behaviors and their causes, you identify areas requiring deliberate training. Reflection transforms abstract self-knowledge into actionable insight. Each realization is a step towards self-mastery, each insight an instrument to shape behavior according to reason. Mindful reflection also strengthens moral courage. By confronting uncomfortable truths about oneself, errors, temptations, failures, without avoidance, the Stoic develops resilience and fortitude. There is no escape from responsibility. Reflection enforces accountability. By owning your actions and intentions fully, you reinforce integrity. Self-discipline is maintained not only by restraint, but by honesty and courage. And reflection is the crucible in which these qualities are forged. Marcus Aurelius viewed reflection as an act of sovereignty. By reviewing his own thoughts and aligning them with virtue, he asserted command over his inner world. External chaos could rage, wars could break out, betrayal could appear at the palace gates. Yet his mind remained disciplined because he had internalized control. Reflection is thus the foundation of freedom. It is the deliberate cultivation of clarity, insight, and self-rule. Discipline emerges naturally when the mind is aware, deliberate, and unshakable. Finally, reflection is cumulative. Each day builds upon the last. Each evening spent examining thought and action compounds into long-term strength. By tracking progress, acknowledging lapses, and setting intentions, you gradually shape a mind capable of sustained discipline. Reflection converts fleeting motivation into durable habit. It converts experience into wisdom. It converts the ordinary flow of life into a training ground for virtue. Mindful reflection is therefore not optional for the Stoic seeking self-discipline. It is indispensable. It transforms daily experience into deliberate practice, chaos into clarity, impulse into reasoned action. Without it, self-discipline falters, becoming reaction rather than mastery. With it, every day is a step on the path toward unshakable character, moral clarity, and inner freedom. Reflection allows the Stoic to see the patterns, anticipate challenges, and adjust behavior in accordance with reason, creating a life of deliberate action rather than passive drift. In summary, practicing mindful reflection equips the mind with insight, the heart with courage, and the soul with resilience. It is both a mirror and a guide, a mirror to understand yourself and a guide to direct your actions wisely. Each moment spent in reflection is a brick in the fortress of self-discipline, each insight a reinforcement of reason, each correction a step toward mastery. The disciplined mind becomes unshakable because it understands itself, anticipates its challenges, and acts consistently with virtue. Reflection is the quiet, relentless forge of the soul, shaping character and securing freedom. Lesson 7. Build resilience. Through adversity, resilience is the bedrock of self-discipline, and the Stoics understood that it is forged not in comfort, but in adversity. Life, as Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics repeatedly observed, is unpredictable, often harsh and seldom aligned with our desires. To stand firm in the face of trials is the hallmark of virtue, and the cultivation of resilience transforms challenges into instruments of growth rather than sources of defeat. Discipline and resilience are inseparable. One strengthens the other, and both are born from deliberate engagement with life's inevitable difficulties. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This simple yet profound insight captures the Stoic approach to adversity. Obstacles are not interruptions of life. They are the very material with which a disciplined character is built. To resist or resent adversity is to be passive. To meet it intentionally with reason and purpose is to become strong. Resilience is cultivated when we perceive difficulties not as threats, but as opportunities to exercise virtue, patience, and courage. Building resilience requires reframing the mind's perception of hardship. Most people interpret adversity as a personal attack, an injustice, or a reason to despair. The Stoic, however, understands that the world operates according to nature, not according to personal preference. Illness, loss, betrayal, and failure are neither evil nor good in themselves. They are neutral events that test the integrity of the individual. The disciplined mind approaches adversity as material to train the soul, a chance to refine judgment and strengthen character. Each challenge endured with reason and virtue adds a layer to the inner fortress. Epictetus emphasized the power of perspective in developing resilience. He noted that we cannot always control what happens, but we can control how we respond. This distinction is critical. When confronted with adversity, The mind that identifies with external events becomes enslaved, reactive, and anxious. The mind that identifies with reason, virtue, and internal choice remains free and capable. Resilience emerges from this distinction, the ability to endure, adapt, and act rightly, regardless of external circumstances. Self-discipline is exercised in this arena daily and unrelentingly. Practical cultivation of resilience begins with small, intentional challenges. The Stoics encouraged voluntary exposure to difficulty, fasting, enduring cold, physical exertion, or emotional reflection. Each voluntary hardship is a rehearsal for unplanned adversity. By engaging willingly with discomfort, the mind learns to tolerate and overcome it. By mastering minor difficulties, one develops confidence and competence in facing major trials. The disciplined individual does not seek suffering for its own sake, but embraces controlled exposure to adversity as training for life's inevitable hardships. Resilience also requires a deep understanding of impermanence. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of the transient nature of fortune, life, and circumstance. All things pass. Suffering passes. Success passes. Health passes. To anchor the mind in what is eternal, virtue, reason, and character, is to fortify it against the fluctuations of fortune. The disciplined mind recognizes that external events cannot diminish its core, only internal failure can. This realization underpins the Stoic approach to adversity and strengthens self-discipline. Furthermore, adversity is a teacher. Pain, loss, and failure reveal the limits of the self, areas requiring attention and the depth of strength already present. Each challenge is a mirror reflecting the mind's resilience or weakness. Marcus Aurelius consistently reflected on his encounters with difficulty, examining how he could act with greater reason, patience, and virtue. This reflective engagement transforms adversity into training, and training into habit. Over time, the disciplined individual develops not only endurance, but also wisdom, understanding that difficulty is a catalyst for growth rather than an obstacle to happiness. The Stoic approach emphasizes action over complaint. Resilience is not passive endurance, it is deliberate engagement. When difficulties arise, the disciplined mind acts. It adapts, solves, and endures with purpose. Complaining, blaming, or resisting unnecessarily dissipates energy and weakens resolve. Instead, focus on what can be influenced: your thoughts, judgments, and actions. By acting rightly, even in adversity, you transform challenge into opportunity. Discipline is exercised with every choice to respond virtuously, calmly, and intentionally. Resilience is also strengthened by embracing uncertainty. Life is inherently unpredictable. Illness, loss, betrayal, and accidents can strike at any moment. The disciplined mind prepares by accepting this uncertainty, building mental agility, and practicing equanimity. Anticipating difficulty, rehearsing responses, and cultivating patience transform potential crises into manageable events. Each encounter with uncertainty strengthens the soul's capacity to remain steadfast. Self-discipline is inseparable from this resilient orientation. The mind that anticipates and endures adversity consistently acts from reason rather than fear. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that personal trials were not punishments, but natural occurrences in a rational universe. Viewing adversity as part of the natural order reduces emotional turbulence and reinforces focus on what is truly valuable. The disciplined mind distinguishes between what is harmful and what is instructive. Each challenge becomes an occasion to exercise courage, temperance, and practical wisdom. Resilience, therefore, is cultivated not in spite of difficulty, but because of it. Practically, building resilience involves daily reflection, deliberate engagement with minor hardships, and conscious mental rehearsal. Observe your reactions to small adversities, delays, criticism, physical discomfort, and respond with reasoned action. Gradually, your capacity to endure grows. The mind, once trained, responds to major trials with composure and clarity. This repeated practice internalizes resilience as a habit, making it automatic rather than reactive. Self-discipline becomes inseparable from the ability to withstand adversity without compromise of virtue. Finally, resilience nurtures confidence and inner freedom. The disciplined individual, having confronted challenges intentionally, knows that external events cannot dictate their happiness or virtue. By practicing endurance, patience, and virtuous action, one develops a stable inner life, capable of withstanding both fortune and misfortune. Marcus Aurelius's repeated reflections reveal this. Strength is not in external security, but in the mastery of oneself. Resilience, cultivated through adversity, is the essence of self-discipline. In conclusion, to build resilience through adversity is to transform obstacles into instruments of growth, to convert suffering into training, and to harness challenge as the forge of character. Each trial endured with reason and virtue strengthens the mind, stabilizes emotions, and reinforces discipline. The Stoics teach that life will inevitably present difficulties, but the disciplined and resilient mind, prepared through reflection, voluntary hardship, and deliberate action, meets each with composure, clarity, and strength. Self-discipline and resilience are inseparable, and together they form the foundation of a life lived in accordance with reason and virtue. Lesson 6. Practice self-restraint in daily life. Self-restraint is the visible expression of self-discipline. It is the ability to govern impulses, control desires, and act according to reason rather than inclination. The Stoics understood that the daily practice of restraint, even in small matters, forms the foundation of moral character. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca consistently emphasized that virtue is not achieved through grand gestures alone, but through the accumulation of deliberate, disciplined choices in ordinary life. Self-restraint is the exercise that trains the mind, body, and spirit to act with intentionality, strengthening the soul against the chaos of impulse. In our modern world, restraint is often overlooked or even scorned. Culture celebrates indulgence, immediate gratification, and the expression of every desire. The average person moves from craving to consumption without pause, allowing impulse to dictate choices. The Stoic observes this and understands the danger. Unrestrained action leads to inconsistency, dependence on external conditions, and vulnerability to emotion. Discipline, by contrast, is cultivated in the conscious practice of saying no when impulse demands yes, of moderating pleasures, and of prioritizing reason over inclination. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that the mind must be sovereign. External events and bodily urges are not inherently evil, but they are powerful influences that can erode virtue if left unchecked. Self-restraint allows reason to prevail, ensuring that actions are deliberate rather than reactive. This practice begins with small, everyday acts, controlling speech, tempering desire for food or comfort, resisting idle distractions, and maintaining focus on meaningful tasks. Each act, though seemingly minor, contributes to the formation of a disciplined character. Self-restraint is deeply connected to the control of desire. To restrain oneself is to recognize that every urge is an opportunity for mastery. Pleasure becomes a tool, not a master. Pain becomes a teacher, not a tyrant. By practicing restraint consistently, the individual strengthens willpower and cultivates the capacity to act with reason in all circumstances. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that the person who cannot govern small desires is ill-prepared to govern the greater challenges of life. Daily restraint, therefore, is the training ground for enduring discipline. Epictetus instructed that one must first identify which impulses are within one's control and which are not. Food, drink, speech, and attention are within the individual's domain. Fortune, reputation, and external events are not. Restraint consists of mastering what is within control and responding rationally to what is not. Each choice to act deliberately rather than reactively is an exercise in self-mastery. Each moment of measured response strengthens the mind's capacity to maintain equanimity in the face of temptation and adversity. The practice of self-restraint also involves patience. Many desires demand immediate satisfaction: to eat, to speak, to act. The disciplined individual delays gratification, understanding that virtue and reason are long-term pursuits, not fleeting indulgences. This delay is not punishment, it is cultivation. By resisting the allure of the moment, the mind develops endurance, foresight, and clarity. Repetition of this practice ingrains habit, and habit solidifies character. Over time, what was once difficult becomes natural, and restraint becomes effortless. Self-restraint also fosters clarity of judgment. When the mind is not constantly swayed by impulse, it can perceive situations accurately. One can discern what is truly valuable and act accordingly. Modern life, full of distraction and temptation, clouds judgment. Indulgence in trivial pleasures erodes focus, making it difficult to act with consistency or integrity. The Stoic counters this by maintaining conscious control over every choice, ensuring that actions reflect reason, virtue, and purpose. Restraint is the lens through which clarity is achieved. Practical exercises in daily restraint include moderation in eating, speech, and consumption of entertainment. Choose to delay impulses, to speak only what is necessary, and to engage thoughtfully with the world rather than reactively. Maintain composure in the face of provocation. Avoid unnecessary indulgences. Each decision to act with deliberation reinforces discipline and strengthens the inner citadel. Small, repeated acts of restraint accumulate into a life characterized by consistency, clarity, and virtue. Moreover, self-restraint cultivates emotional resilience. When impulses are controlled, emotions are less likely to dominate behavior. Anger, fear, desire, and envy can arise, but with restraint, they are observed, processed, and managed rather than acted upon. This emotional equilibrium is essential to self-discipline, as uncontrolled emotions are often the source of ethical failure and psychological turmoil. Restraint, therefore, is not denial, but mastery, the ability to navigate life with wisdom and calm. Marcus Aurelius also connected self-restraint to freedom. True freedom is not the ability to indulge every desire, but the capacity to act according to reason, independently of external conditions or internal compulsion. Restraint liberates the mind from slavery to impulse and external influence. By practicing restraint consistently, the individual becomes the author of their own actions, the arbiter of their own conduct, and the master of their own character. Discipline is the natural consequence of such mastery. In conclusion, practicing self-restraint in daily life is a cornerstone of Stoic discipline. It shapes character, strengthens willpower, and cultivates clarity of judgment. Each act of deliberate control, no matter how small, builds the foundation for resilience, moral courage, and inner freedom. Discipline is not achieved in grand gestures alone, but through the accumulation of repeated conscious choices to act in accordance with reason and virtue. By restraining impulses, managing desires, and responding thoughtfully to the world, the Stoic cultivates a mind capable of enduring adversity, making ethical decisions, and living a life of sustained self-mastery. The disciplined mind, trained in daily restraint, becomes unshakable. Pleasures are enjoyed without dependency, pain is endured without fear, and action is guided by reason rather than impulse. Self-restraint is the muscle of the soul. Exercised consistently, it grows stronger, enabling the individual to act decisively, endure difficulty, and cultivate virtue. This daily practice transforms ordinary life into a training ground for wisdom, fortitude, and moral excellence, forming the core of a disciplined, resilient, and free character. Lesson 5. Live according to reason. The essence of Stoic self-discipline lies in the alignment of life with reason. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that the human mind is endowed with reason, the faculty that distinguishes us from mere animals and empowers us to act in accordance with virtue. To live according to reason is to prioritize rational judgment over impulse, principle over passion, and wisdom over transient pleasure. Discipline emerges naturally when actions are guided by deliberate thought rather than reactive emotion. The Stoics considered this alignment not optional, but fundamental. A life disconnected from reason is a life adrift, subject to fortune, emotion, and habit. Living according to reason begins with understanding the purpose of the human being. Epictetus emphasized that our highest good is the cultivation of virtue, achieved by exercising our rational faculties in every aspect of life. Reason is the instrument by which we distinguish between what is good, indifferent, and harmful. External circumstances, wealth, reputation, health, are not inherently good or evil. Only our judgments and choices are truly within our control and therefore subject to moral evaluation. Discipline arises when we consciously employ reason to guide these choices consistently. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the fleeting and uncertain nature of life. He observed that the world is unpredictable and fortune is capricious. Yet he maintained that reason allows one to navigate this uncertainty with stability. Acting according to reason does not eliminate hardship or suffering, but it ensures that these external forces cannot corrupt the inner self. The disciplined individual understands that emotions are shaped by perception. By regulating judgment through reason, the mind remains steadfast amidst chaos. Living rationally, therefore, is synonymous with living free. Reason also provides the framework for ethical action. Decisions guided by reason are aligned with justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom, the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism. Acting irrationally, on the other hand, leads to indulgence, impulsivity, and moral error. Self-discipline is exercised each time. Reason overrides impulse. When anger is restrained, when desire is moderated, when fear is confronted with courage. Living according to reason is not a passive observance of logic. It is an active, moment-to-moment practice of evaluating, choosing, and acting virtuously. In daily life, practicing reason requires conscious attention. Begin by observing your thoughts and impulses. Ask, does this thought serve my higher purpose? Does this action align with virtue? Each pause before responding, each deliberate choice over automatic reaction, is an exercise in discipline. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly urged himself to question not what others do, but what he himself can do rationally. This inward focus, the mastery of judgment and choice, lies at the heart of living according to reason. External events are irrelevant. Only the decisions of the rational mind matter. Living according to reason also entails embracing the natural order. The Stoics taught that the universe operates according to logos, the rational principle underlying nature. By aligning our will with this order, we cultivate harmony, tranquility, and moral coherence. Acting irrationally, through impulsive desire, excessive emotion, or moral compromise, is a rebellion against nature and the rational faculties granted to us. Discipline is therefore both an ethical and natural imperative. The rational mind, exercised consistently, aligns with the flow of life rather than resisting it. The practice of reason is inseparable from reflection. Daily examination of one's choices, motives, and actions ensures that the mind remains vigilant and disciplined. Marcus Aurelius often recorded his meditations as exercises in rational alignment. By contemplating virtue, mortality, and the transience of life, he reinforced his commitment to act consistently with reason. Reflection transforms awareness into practice. Understanding the rational course of action is insufficient without deliberate implementation. Discipline is the bridge between knowledge and action, forged through habitual, rational engagement. Living according to reason also strengthens emotional resilience. By evaluating events through the lens of logic and virtue, the mind is less susceptible to emotional turbulence. Anger, fear, envy, and grief arise from judgments, not external circumstances. Reason allows one to perceive events objectively, respond intentionally, and maintain inner stability. Each application of reason under stress reinforces the mind's capacity to endure adversity without yielding to destructive emotion. Self-discipline is inseparable from this rational fortitude. Practical exercises to cultivate reason include journaling, contemplation, and mental rehearsal. Each evening, review decisions made throughout the day. Were they guided by virtue and rational judgment? Could they have been more aligned with principle? In the morning, anticipate potential challenges and consider how to respond rationally. By rehearsing action in advance, the mind is prepared to act with discipline when confronted with temptation, adversity, or provocation. Repetition of this practice conditions thought and behavior, embedding reason as the natural guide of life. Furthermore, living according to reason fosters independence and freedom. The disciplined mind is not swayed by popular opinion, fleeting emotion, or external pressure. It acts from principle, guided by rational evaluation of what is truly valuable. This internal sovereignty is the ultimate goal of Stoic discipline. Freedom from being enslaved by desire, fear, or circumstance. Each act consistent with reason reinforces autonomy, strengthens character, and cultivates confidence in navigating life's uncertainties. Finally, reason allows for the integration of all other Stoic principles. Control of desires, voluntary hardship, reflection, resilience, self-restraint, all are exercised and sustained through rational judgment. Without reason, discipline becomes arbitrary, inconsistent, and fragile. With reason, every action, choice, and thought contributes to the formation of an unshakable mind and a life lived in accordance with virtue. Marcus Aurelius, through his meditations and practice, demonstrates that reason is the compass, discipline is the method, and virtue is the destination. In conclusion, living according to reason is the central pillar of Stoic self-discipline. It provides clarity, stability, and direction. By consistently aligning actions, judgments, and choices with rational evaluation and virtue, the mind is fortified against chaos, emotion, and impulse. Each deliberate act, informed by reason, strengthens character and builds the foundation for enduring self-discipline. The disciplined individual lives consciously, responds intentionally, and thrives regardless of external circumstance, embodying the Stoic ideal of mastery over self and alignment with nature. Living according to reason is not merely a philosophical notion, it is the lived practice of freedom, strength, and enduring virtue. Lesson 4. Embrace mortality and the present moment. Few concepts are as central to Stoic self-discipline as the recognition of mortality. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the solitude of his chambers, frequently reminded himself that life is fleeting, that each day is impermanent, and that time is the most precious resource. To embrace mortality is not to despair, but to awaken. Awareness of life's transience focuses the mind, sharpens purpose, and cultivates self-discipline. The present moment becomes sacred, the only arena in which virtue can be exercised, choices can be made, and character can be forged. The Stoic understands that procrastination and distraction are luxury the dead cannot afford. The practice of embracing mortality begins with honest contemplation. Marcus often meditated on the inevitability of death, not morbidly, but to clarify priorities. "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years, he wrote. "Fate hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." The disciplined mind internalizes this truth. The future is uncertain, the past immutable, and only the present is actionable. Discipline is the act of investing effort in the now, acting virtuously with the time available, and relinquishing attachment to imagined outcomes or endless delays. Recognition of mortality sharpens focus. Consider how easily the mind drifts into triviality, the consumption of meaningless entertainment, the endless distractions of modern life, the pursuit of ephemeral status. The Stoic counteracts this tendency by constantly reminding themselves of impermanence. Each action is evaluated. Does this serve virtue? Does it advance character? Does it honor the finite nature of life? By measuring decisions against the backdrop of mortality, one cultivates intentionality and concentration, hallmarks of self-discipline. Embracing mortality also transforms the relationship with fear. Many fears of loss, failure, criticism stem from attachment to existence, reputation, and comfort. Stoic reflection reveals that death is neither enemy nor injustice, but an inevitable natural process. By internalizing this, the mind releases paralyzing anxiety and gains freedom to act. Courage becomes an expression of reasoned awareness. Knowing that life is finite, the disciplined individual acts decisively, refuses delay, and faces challenges with composure. Mortality fuels diligence rather than despair. The present moment, inseparable from the awareness of mortality, is where action and discipline converge. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that the future is largely unknowable, the past irretrievable, and only the present is within one's control. To procrastinate is to disregard the gift of now. To indulge in idle distractions is to surrender time that will never return. Self-discipline, therefore, is exercised in the conscious engagement with the present, deliberate action, focused attention, and purposeful choice. Each moment fully attended is a victory of reason over neglect. Practically, embracing the present begins with mindfulness. Observe each thought, each impulse, each decision. Ask, am I fully here, or am I scattered across worries about the past and the future? Engage fully in every task, whether mundane or monumental. Small acts, mindful walking, attentive listening, disciplined work, reinforce the habit of presence. The more one practices presence, the more the mind strengthens its capacity for deliberate, rational action. Mortality provides the urgency that transforms mindfulness from theory into disciplined practice. Stoicism also teaches that embracing mortality enriches gratitude. Awareness of finitude illuminates the value of ordinary moments, the laughter of a friend, the warmth of sun on skin, the breath of life itself. Gratitude reinforces discipline by orienting the mind toward appreciation rather than indulgence, reflection rather than consumption, intentional action rather than reactive habit. By valuing what is fleeting, one prioritizes what is enduring: virtue, reason, and character. Embracing mortality fosters detachment from trivial concerns. Status, wealth, and fame, the preoccupations of many, are ephemeral. Death levels all distinctions. The disciplined mind recognizes that attachment to these externals is a misallocation of effort. Energy directed toward virtue, reason, and character yields permanent benefit. Energy expended on ephemeral gratification produces fleeting satisfaction and potential regret. Mortality guides choice and strengthens resolve, ensuring that discipline is consistently applied to what is truly valuable. Marcus Aurelius frequently rehearsed mortality as a practical exercise. He imagined the impermanence of possessions, relationships, and even his own life. By confronting these truths intentionally, he reduced fear, clarified priorities, and reinforced his commitment to disciplined, virtuous action. Reflection on death becomes a tool for moral training. It accelerates the understanding that time is precious, effort is limited, and every decision matters. This awareness converts procrastination into action, distraction into focus, and indulgence into measured, reasoned behavior. In daily life, one can practice embracing mortality through reflection and journaling. Consider what would matter if today were the last day of life. Evaluate actions against that lens. Choose integrity, courage, and virtue. Let trivial concerns fade. Act decisively in areas under your control. Repeated application builds mental resilience, sharpens purpose, and fosters sustained self-discipline. Life's finite nature becomes the impetus for continuous improvement and deliberate choice. Embracing the present moment also cultivates emotional clarity. Anxiety about the future and regret over the past are diminished when attention is centered on actionable reality. Desire for what is unattainable weakens, focus on essential tasks strengthens. Each moment is an opportunity to exercise reasoned judgment and moral discernment. The disciplined individual transforms temporal awareness into sustained effort, ensuring that character is strengthened consistently, not sporadically. Ultimately, embracing mortality and the present moment is a unifying principle for all Stoic practices. It informs voluntary hardship, control of desire, mindful reflection, resilience, and living according to reason. Awareness of finitude motivates the mind to act virtuously now, without delay. Recognition of the present as the only actionable domain empowers disciplined choice and deliberate action. By fully integrating mortality into consciousness, the individual cultivates urgency, clarity, and consistent alignment with virtue. In conclusion, the disciplined life is inseparable from the acceptance of mortality and the embrace of the present moment. Each reflection on finitude strengthens resolve, directs attention, and sharpens judgment. Each conscious engagement with the now reinforces habit, builds character, and fosters self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius exemplifies this practice. His meditations remind us that life is fleeting, action is immediate, and virtue is the ultimate objective. Discipline is exercised moment by moment through deliberate focus, mindful reflection, and purposeful action, guided by the awareness that the present is all we truly possess. By integrating the recognition of mortality into daily practice, the Stoic cultivates freedom from fear, precision in action, clarity of thought, and resilience of character. The disciplined mind lives fully, acts intentionally, and invests in what is truly valuable. Time, the most precious of resources, becomes a catalyst for virtue rather than a source of anxiety. Life is fleeting, and the disciplined individual uses each moment wisely, exercising reason, cultivating virtue, and strengthening self-mastery in the only domain that truly matters, the present. Lesson 3. Develop emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is the cornerstone of Stoic self-discipline. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca all emphasized that a mind unprepared to endure emotional turbulence cannot exercise true control over itself. The disciplined individual does not allow circumstances, other people's opinions, or fleeting events to dictate mood or behavior. Instead, they cultivate a stable inner citadel capable of observing, assessing, and responding with reason. Emotional resilience is not suppression of feeling, but the mastery of the response to feeling. It is the capacity to endure, adapt, and act consistently, regardless of external or internal disturbance. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that external events are neutral. What determines peace or disturbance is the judgment we place upon them. A loss, insult, or setback in itself is neither harmful nor beneficial. The mind that interprets such events through reason rather than instinctive reaction maintains equilibrium. Resilience is cultivated by internalizing this distinction. Emotions arise, but they do not automatically dictate action. Discipline is exercised every time reason moderates impulse, each time the soul observes without surrendering to immediate reaction. Developing emotional resilience requires continuous awareness. Modern life, saturated with social media, constant comparison, and the pressures of work and relationships, intensifies emotional volatility. The Stoic, however, trains to observe without attachment, to act from principle rather than reaction. When anger arises, do not lash out. Observe the source and respond rationally. When fear arises, do not retreat blindly. Assess what is within control and proceed with reason. Repeated practice strengthens the mind's capacity to withstand disturbance, transforming impulsive reactions into deliberate, virtuous actions. Epictetus emphasized that the source of suffering is not external, but internal. People are not disturbed by events themselves, but by their judgments about those events. This understanding is pivotal in cultivating emotional resilience. By dissecting the root of emotional reactions, the disciplined mind gains autonomy. Every challenge becomes a rehearsal for composure. A delay in traffic, a harsh word, a failure or rejection, all opportunities to exercise patience, fortitude, and rational control. Over time, the mind becomes robust, capable of sustaining peace under a wide range of conditions. Practical exercises in emotional resilience include daily reflection and meditation on the inevitability of discomfort and adversity. Recognize that life will not always accord with your desires, that suffering is inevitable, and that loss, betrayal, and frustration are natural. Consciously rehearsing these realities diminishes their shock when encountered. Marcus Aurelius wrote about imagining adversity before it occurs, the practice known as premeditatio malorum. By anticipating challenges, the mind acclimates to emotional turbulence, responding with measured action rather than panic or complaint. Resilience is further reinforced through voluntary hardship. Exposure to minor discomforts, fasting, cold exposure, rigorous exercise, or deliberate delays of gratification builds tolerance. Each encounter with controlled adversity trains the mind to remain calm and composed in the face of unexpected challenges. When real difficulty arises, the disciplined individual has already rehearsed endurance and is prepared to respond rationally. Emotional resilience is thus both preventive and proactive, cultivated through intentional practice rather than mere reaction to circumstance. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the fleeting nature of emotion. Happiness, pleasure, anger, grief, and fear are transient. They pass as quickly as they arise. By observing this impermanence, the mind gains perspective and detachment. A disciplined mind does not chase every fleeting pleasure nor flee every discomfort. Instead, it responds according to reason, guided by the enduring principles of virtue. Emotional resilience grows as one internalizes this perspective, learning to navigate the flux of feelings without losing balance or purpose. Another critical component of emotional resilience is the practice of reframing. The Stoics teach that interpretation shapes experience. An insult can be seen as a personal attack or as an opportunity to practice patience and equanimity. A failure can be seen as catastrophe or as instruction and refinement. By consciously choosing the lens through which events are perceived, the disciplined mind transforms potential emotional destabilization into an occasion for growth. Reframing, practiced consistently, becomes habitual, and the mind naturally responds with resilience. Emotional resilience also develops through the cultivation of gratitude and perspective. Recognizing the abundance of what remains constant, the capacity for reason, relationships grounded in virtue, physical health, intellectual development, tempers reactive impulses. Perspective allows the mind to discern between what is truly significant and what is trivial, preventing emotional overreaction to minor inconveniences or slights. The disciplined mind invests energy only where it matters, strengthening both self-mastery and purposeful engagement with life. Importantly, resilience is not the suppression of empathy or compassion. Stoicism does not advocate emotional numbness. Rather, it teaches control over response. By observing feelings without being dominated by them, one can act with compassion, fairness, and wisdom, even in situations that provoke fear, anger, or sadness. The disciplined individual channels emotion productively, using it to inform but not dictate behavior. Emotional resilience, therefore, is the foundation of ethical and effective action. Finally, emotional resilience is cumulative. Each moment of composure reinforces future stability. Each choice to act according to reason rather than reactive impulse strengthens the mind's capacity to endure. Marcus Aurelius's meditations repeatedly demonstrate that resilience is built gradually through reflection, practice, and intentional engagement with the challenges of daily life. By strengthening the soul's capacity to withstand disturbance, the Stoic builds a life of consistent self-discipline, inner freedom, and unshakable character. In conclusion, developing emotional resilience is an essential pillar of Stoic self-discipline. It allows the mind to observe without surrendering, to act from reason in the face of impulse, and to maintain balance amid the inevitable turbulence of life. Through reflection, voluntary hardship, premeditation of adversity, and reframing, the disciplined individual cultivates a stable, enduring inner citadel. This resilience ensures that decisions are guided by principle rather than passion, and that actions are aligned with virtue. Emotional resilience is the lifeblood of self-discipline, the steady heart behind the reasoned mind, capable of enduring, adapting, and thriving under any circumstance. Lesson 2. Practice daily focus and attention. Self-discipline is not merely a concept, it is a practice grounded in the conscious direction of attention. Marcus Aurelius consistently emphasized the centrality of focus. The mind, left untamed, drifts across distractions, desires, and external perturbations. To cultivate discipline, one must first train the mind to attend fully to the present moment, to deliberate on what matters, and to act in accordance with reason rather than impulse. Daily focus and attention are the engines that drive consistent action, transforming knowledge of virtue into the lived reality of character. In modern life, attention is under siege. Endless notifications, constant streams of information, and cultural pressures demand immediate engagement, fragmenting the mind and eroding willpower. The Stoics understood that without intentional focus, the soul becomes enslaved to distraction. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly urged himself to concentrate on the tasks at hand, to maintain clarity amid chaos, and to resist the pull of trivial matters. Focus is not convenience. It is a deliberate act of aligning the mind with reason, virtue, and purpose. Practicing daily focus begins with awareness. Observe where attention naturally flows. Are you consumed by the trivial or the transient? Do fleeting impulses dominate your energy? The disciplined individual monitors the mind continuously, recognizing the habitual tendencies toward distraction. Awareness alone is the first step. It creates the opportunity for redirection. By noticing where attention wanders, the Stoic interrupts autopilot, reorienting energy toward actions that strengthen character, advance virtue, and fulfill duty. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that every day offers countless moments of decision: where to place effort, what to think, how to act. Each decision is an opportunity to practice focus. The mind cannot act virtuously if it is scattered. Attention must be deliberately directed. In journaling and meditation, Marcus trained himself to confront distractions, to identify which thoughts and impulses warranted action, and to disregard those that would lead to weakness or error. Focus, in this sense, is both defensive and proactive. It preserves mental energy and directs it toward what is meaningful. Daily practice of focus also involves simplifying the mental environment. Stoics advocate minimizing unnecessary engagements, filtering external influences, and reducing the noise that competes with reason. By intentionally limiting distractions, the mind becomes more capable of sustained attention on what is under control: thoughts, choices, actions, and character development. The disciplined individual curates attention as a precious resource, investing it only where it will yield enduring value. Attention is intimately linked with intention. To act without focus is to act impulsively, often in contradiction to reason and virtue. Each moment of conscious attention is an opportunity to align behavior with principle. Marcus Aurelius instructed himself to approach every encounter, decision, and task with awareness, to speak deliberately, to act justly, to respond calmly. Through repetition, these focused actions become habit, and habit strengthens self-discipline. The mind trained to attend consistently becomes resilient, precise, and purposeful. Practical exercises in daily focus include journaling, deliberate breathing, and single tasking. Begin the day by reviewing intentions. What matters today? What actions will align with virtue? During work, practice mindfulness by attending fully to the current task rather than fragmenting attention across multiple demands. In conversation, listen intently, speak deliberately. Each act of sustained attention reinforces neural and psychological patterns that strengthen discipline, creating a virtuous cycle of awareness, action, and reflection. Focus also guards against emotional perturbation. Distraction amplifies stress, envy, and reactive behavior. By concentrating on what is within one's control and attending to the rational assessment of events, the mind is less susceptible to emotional turbulence. Marcus Aurelius viewed focus as a shield against the chaos of circumstance. It allows the individual to act intentionally, resist impulsive reactions, and preserve inner tranquility. Emotional stability and self-discipline are thus reinforced through the continuous cultivation of attention. Another critical component of focus is prioritization. The disciplined mind does not attempt to address every stimulus, thought, or desire. Instead, it evaluates the relative importance of tasks and impulses, directing energy to what furthers virtue, reason, and purpose. This conscious allocation prevents wasted effort, reduces stress, and reinforces mastery over the self. Focus is therefore selective. It involves both attention and discernment, knowing what to engage with and what to set aside. Each act of prioritization strengthens discipline. Marcus Aurelius also emphasized the impermanence of distraction. Thoughts, impulses, and external events rise and fade. They are transient by nature. The mind, trained in focus, observes without surrendering, acts without compulsion, and redirects attention consistently toward meaningful ends. Daily attention practice converts fleeting moments into purposeful action, habit into character, and awareness into strength. The disciplined individual becomes capable of sustained effort, moral clarity, and reasoned response. Finally, daily focus and attention integrate all other aspects of Stoic discipline. Control of desire, voluntary hardship, reflection, resilience, self-restraint, living according to reason, and embracing mortality all require the attentive mind to execute consistently. Without focus, these practices falter. With focus, they are strengthened and compounded. Discipline is not abstract theory, but embodied practice, realized moment by moment through deliberate attention and conscious engagement with life. In conclusion, practicing daily focus and attention is essential for cultivating Stoic self-discipline. It preserves energy, strengthens reason, and ensures consistent alignment with virtue. By observing the mind, directing attention intentionally, minimizing distractions, and prioritizing what is meaningful, the disciplined individual transforms knowledge into action, impulse into reason, and habit into character. Focus is the engine of self-mastery, the lens through which the mind perceives reality accurately, and the tool by which every other principle of Stoicism is effectively applied. Discipline emerges naturally when attention is trained, sharpened, and sustained, creating a mind capable of thriving under any circumstance, unshaken by distraction and aligned with the highest expression of human virtue. Lesson 1. Commit to consistent daily practice. At the foundation of all Stoic discipline lies the principle of consistency. Knowledge without practice, insight without action, virtue without habituation, these are hollow. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca all emphasized that self-discipline is not a product of occasional effort or fleeting inspiration. It is cultivated through steadfast daily practice. To commit oneself to a consistent regimen of moral, mental, and physical training is to forge a character capable of enduring adversity, mastering desire, and acting rationally in all circumstances. Discipline, in this sense, is not an abstract ideal, but the outcome of persistent, deliberate effort over time. Consistency begins with intention. Each morning, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of the purpose of his actions: to act justly, to resist impulse, to cultivate reason, to maintain virtue regardless of external conditions. The disciplined individual sets similar intentions, clear, actionable, and grounded in principle. Daily practice transforms these intentions into reality. Without repetition, lessons are learned and forgotten, insights fade, and character remains unshaped. Consistency is the bridge between knowledge and embodiment. Without it, the mind remains untrained and vulnerable to the seductions of impulse and comfort. The practice of consistency extends to all areas of life. Physical, mental, and moral training are intertwined in Stoic discipline. Physical resilience is cultivated through regular exposure to effort, discomfort, and challenge, walking, exercise, fasting, or other forms of voluntary hardship. Mental strength is honed through reflection, journaling, study, and contemplation. Moral fortitude is strengthened by deliberate adherence to virtue, acting with justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom in every interaction. Daily practice is the method by which these qualities coalesce into an enduring character. Marcus Aurelius frequently emphasized the importance of small, repeated actions. He did not seek perfection in a single day, nor did he expect immediate transformation. Instead, he focused on the accumulation of effort, performing duties conscientiously, exercising judgment, and acting according to reason, even in trivial matters. Each small act, when repeated consistently, compounds into profound change. This principle illustrates that the path to discipline is incremental. Mastery is not instantaneous. It is the product of persistent alignment of action with principle, day after day. Consistency also reinforces self-mastery by habituating virtue. The Stoics recognize that the mind and character are shaped by repeated actions. Indulgence, avoidance, or impulse, when repeated, become patterns that weaken discipline. Conversely, deliberate action aligned with reason and virtue, when repeated, forms habits that strengthen the soul. Daily commitment ensures that virtue becomes automatic, not dependent on inspiration, mood, or external circumstances. The disciplined individual, through repeated practice, internalizes reason and fortitude until they guide behavior instinctively. Practical application of consistent daily practice involves structured routines. Begin each day with intention. Identify key areas for action aligned with virtue. Include reflection on mortality, rehearsal of adversity, management of desires, and attention to reasoned judgment. Throughout the day, consciously apply principles in interactions, decisions, and tasks. Conclude the day with review and journaling, assessing performance, identifying areas for improvement, and recommitting to disciplined action. This cycle of intention, practice, and reflection solidifies self-discipline and ensures continual growth. Consistency also mitigates the influence of emotional fluctuation. Motivation is fleeting. Moods rise and fall. Discipline, if dependent on temporary inspiration, collapses under adversity. By committing to daily practice, regardless of feeling, the Stoic ensures that virtue and rational action are not conditional on external or internal states. Repetition creates resilience, habituates reason, and strengthens the ability to act virtuously even when desire, fear, or distraction is present. Consistency is the scaffolding upon which self-discipline is built. Marcus Aurelius further emphasized that consistent practice requires vigilance against laziness, distraction, and self-deception. The mind must be aware of excuses and rationalizations, observing where effort falters and taking corrective action. By confronting these tendencies daily, the individual reinforces self-control and ensures that discipline is not compromised by inertia or neglect. Each day becomes both a test and a training ground, with success measured in effort, adherence, and reflection rather than immediate results. Importantly, consistent daily practice fosters humility and patience. Change does not occur overnight. Mastery is a lifelong pursuit. The disciplined mind accepts incremental progress, values repetition, and remains committed despite setbacks. Failures, lapses, and difficulties are not reasons for abandonment, but opportunities for renewed effort. The Stoic approach recognizes that self-discipline is a journey, not a destination, and that persistent, deliberate practice is the means by which the soul is fortified and character is perfected. In conclusion, committing to consistent daily practice is the foundation of all Stoic self-discipline. It transforms intention into habit, knowledge into action, and fleeting motivation into enduring character. Through repeated effort in reflection, action, voluntary hardship, attention, emotional control, and rational alignment, the disciplined individual cultivates resilience, mastery over desires, and unshakable virtue. Daily practice ensures that every day contributes to growth, that the mind remains sovereign over impulse and circumstance, and that the soul is steadily strengthened. Self-discipline is not a single act, but the accumulation of deliberate, repeated, and intentional choices. A life forged consistently in accordance with reason, virtue, and the enduring principles of Stoicism. As we conclude this journey through the 12 Stoic principles to build self-discipline, it becomes evident that mastery of the self is neither quick nor easy. Discipline is forged through daily intention, practiced relentlessly, and anchored in the understanding that the only true domain of control lies within. On Stoic Diary, we have explored each principle in depth, from committing to consistent daily practice to cultivating indifference toward pleasure and pain. Now, we tie them together into a coherent philosophy for living with virtue, reason, and unshakable strength. Self-discipline begins with awareness. Without understanding where we are and how we act, no consistent effort can be maintained. The disciplined mind observes desires, impulses, and patterns, distinguishing between what is within control and what is external. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that external events are neutral. It is our judgment and response that determine peace or disturbance. By focusing daily on what we can influence, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, we reclaim authority over our lives and cultivate freedom from the chaos of circumstance. Consistency underpins every other principle. Knowledge is not enough. Reflection without practice achieves little. Self-discipline demands daily engagement, repetition, and habituation. Each act of restraint, each conscious decision to act virtuously, strengthens the soul. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the incremental nature of growth. Small, repeated efforts accumulate into profound character change. On Stoic Diary, we reinforce that the path to discipline is built moment by moment, choice by choice, never reliant on inspiration, but sustained through habitual practice. Voluntary hardship complements this consistency. The Stoics teach that exposure to discomfort, deliberately and intentionally, strengthens resilience. Cold, hunger, exertion, and challenge are tools, not punishments. By rehearsing endurance in manageable increments, we prepare for life's inevitable difficulties. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus both practiced hardship as a form of training, ensuring that when real adversity arose, their minds and characters remained unshaken. Discipline, therefore, is strengthened through controlled resistance to comfort, making the soul robust and capable. Control of desire is inseparable from voluntary hardship. Desire, left unchecked, enslaves the mind. Pleasure seduces, distraction seduces, and unexamined wants dominate thought and action. Stoic practice requires the careful observation, moderation, and rational evaluation of all cravings. Marcus Aurelius reminds us to act in alignment with virtue, not impulse. Each act of self-restraint reinforces discipline, builds autonomy, and nurtures the capacity to respond to life deliberately rather than reactively. The disciplined individual becomes master of appetites, not their servant. Emotional resilience, closely linked to these practices, ensures stability amidst turmoil. The Stoic mind learns that feelings are not directives, they are data. Anger, fear, grief, and desire arise naturally, but are neutral until we assign power to them. By cultivating emotional resilience through reflection, anticipation, and rational engagement, the mind becomes capable of enduring adversity without surrendering to impulse or despair. On Stoic Diary, we emphasize that the strength of character is inseparable from the strength of emotional fortitude. Each emotional challenge met with reason reinforces the inner citadel. Reflection is the tool through which the mind consolidates knowledge into action. Daily review, contemplation, and journaling transform fleeting experience into durable wisdom. Marcus Aurelius constantly assessed his thoughts, intentions, and behaviors, identifying errors and recommitting to virtue. Reflection is not passive. It is deliberate, methodical, and instructive. It bridges the gap between understanding Stoic principles and embodying them in daily life. By practicing mindful reflection, the mind continually refines itself, strengthening self-discipline through insight and honest assessment. Living according to reason integrates all these aspects. Reason is the compass by which action is guided. Impulse, habit, and external circumstance must be subordinated to rational judgment. The disciplined mind evaluates every thought, choice, and action against the standards of virtue. Marcus Aurelius consistently sought to align every moment of life with reason, exercising control over internal responses and acting ethically despite external pressure. Discipline emerges naturally from this alignment. Reason becomes the architect of behavior, shaping character in enduring ways. Embracing mortality and the present moment adds urgency and clarity. Awareness of the impermanence of life sharpens priorities, illuminates what is truly valuable, and extinguishes distraction. Each moment becomes an opportunity to act virtuously, exercise restraint, and strengthen the mind. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that time is finite, that death is inevitable, and that procrastination is the enemy of discipline. On Stoic Diary, we underscore that attention to the present fosters both focus and the deliberate practice of virtue, converting the fleeting passage of time into purposeful action. Voluntary exposure to adversity, control of desire, reflection, reason, and presence converge in the cultivation of resilience. Each principle reinforces the others. Challenges are not avoided, they are reframed as instruments for growth. Desires are not blindly followed, they are moderated through rational choice. Emotions are not suppressed, they are observed and guided. The present moment is not wasted, it is fully engaged. Discipline, therefore, is not fragmented. It is a coherent, integrated practice that encompasses the mind, heart, and soul. The final principle, cultivating indifference toward pleasure and pain, unites the Stoic approach to freedom and self-mastery. The mind, trained to regard pleasure and pain as neutral, is liberated from the tyranny of external circumstances. Pleasure is enjoyed without dependency. Pain is endured without surrender. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly practiced this mindset, recognizing that the true power of discipline lies in internal sovereignty. No external event, no fleeting sensation, no unforeseen adversity can destabilize the mind that has achieved this mastery. The disciplined soul acts from virtue, reason, and principle, not from impulse or fear. Through the integration of these 12 principles, the Stoic mind becomes a fortress, resilient, calm, and unwavering. Each principle reinforces the others, creating a self-reinforcing system of self-discipline. Reflection strengthens focus, focus reinforces resilience, resilience deepens restraint, restraint enhances control of desire sharpens reason, reason clarifies purpose. Purpose directs attention to the present, attention sustains consistency, consistency solidifies habit. Habit reinforces virtue, and virtue finally sustains peace and freedom regardless of fortune. Marcus Aurelius's writings demonstrate this intricate interplay. Discipline is a holistic endeavor woven from daily, deliberate action guided by reason and awareness. On Stoic Diary, the aim is not simply to convey philosophy, but to provide practical guidance. These principles are not theoretical abstractions, they are tools for living. Daily engagement with these practices transforms thought into action, impulse into choice, and experience into growth. The disciplined individual embodies reason, withstands adversity, moderates desire, and maintains clarity in every moment. Each day offers the opportunity to rehearse virtue, to refine the mind, and to strengthen the soul. Through commitment, repetition, and reflection, Stoic self-discipline becomes both habitual and resilient, a foundation for freedom, clarity, and inner peace. Discipline, as taught by the Stoics, is not punishment or austerity. It is empowerment. It is the recognition that while external events may fluctuate, the mind can remain sovereign. By committing to daily practice, by observing, reflecting, and acting with reason, the individual gains mastery over self. Pleasure and pain, success and failure, praise and criticism, all are regarded with equanimity, filtered through reason and virtue. Life's uncertainties no longer dominate the soul. Instead, the disciplined mind remains steadfast, capable of thriving in any condition. The Stoic path requires patience and perseverance. Transformation is gradual, cumulative, and deliberate. One does not awaken unshakable, immune to desire, fear, or distraction. Mastery is the product of daily choices, repeated effort, and relentless reflection. Marcus Aurelius' example demonstrates that even the most disciplined mind required constant vigilance. Self-discipline is therefore both an art and a practice, cultivated moment by moment, decision by decision, in the ordinary and extraordinary events of life. Each action aligned with reason strengthens the chain of virtue and fortifies the mind against future disturbance. As we bring together these 12 principles, the message is clear. Self-discipline is achievable, measurable, and transformative. It requires awareness, intentionality, practice, and reflection. It demands courage, patience, and resilience. It integrates all facets of the self, mind, emotion, and behavior into coherent, virtuous action. On Stoic Diary, we emphasize that these practices are for every individual. They do not require extraordinary talent, wealth, or circumstance, only commitment to daily effort, guided by reason and grounded in virtue. In conclusion, mastering self-discipline through the 12 Stoic principles is a journey, not a destination. It is a continuous, conscious practice that encompasses reflection, attention, resilience, restraint, reason, and presence. It transforms ordinary life into a training ground for virtue, converting challenges into growth, pleasure into measured enjoyment, and pain into instruction. Marcus Aurelius's writings illuminate the path. Discipline is the natural outcome of consistent, intentional engagement with life in accordance with reason. By internalizing these principles, the individual becomes sovereign over self, steadfast amidst adversity, and aligned with the highest ideals of human nature. On Stoic Diary, we invite you to integrate these practices into your own life. Begin today. Reflect, focus, endure, restrain, and act with reason. Each moment is an opportunity to build the mind, strengthen the soul, and cultivate virtue. Over time, these daily acts compound, producing a disciplined, resilient, and free character capable of thriving in any circumstance. The journey is long, but the rewards are profound. Peace, freedom, clarity, and moral integrity. By living in alignment with these Stoic principles, you embody the philosophy and practice, transforming knowledge into wisdom, intention into habit, and life itself into an enduring expression of self-mastery.